still of night, where shadows creep. Dan and Norm guide us, no secrets to keep. Through the ancient woods, where lost souls sigh, Bigfoot watches from the depths, lurking nearby. Welcome to the gateway to the unknown, where whispers of ghosts chill you to the bone. Paranormal tales and unknown phenomena unfold. With cryptids and mysteries, let the stories be told. Echoes of laughter from realms out of sight. Ghostly apparitions dance in the pale moonlight. In haunted halls where shadows entwine, Dan and Norm lead us through the veil of time. Welcome to the gateway to the unknown, where whispers of ghosts chill you to the bone. Paranormal tales and unknown phenomena unfold. With cryptids and mysteries, let the stories be told. Through fog and fear we venture deep into ancient mysteries where secrets sleep. With every heartbeat we draw near to enigmas hidden in the atmosphere. Welcome to the gateway to the unknown, where whispers of ghosts chill you to the bone. Paranormal tales and unknown phenomena unfold. With cryptids and mysteries, let the stories be told. So hold on tight as we drift away. Dan and Norm will return another day. In dreams we'll wander where shadows roam free. At the gateway to the unknown, come explore with me. As echoes linger in the night's embrace, ancient mysteries whisper, they leave a trace. With every thought that fades into dark, the gateway awaits, it ignites a spark.
Telekinesis, also known as psychokinesis, is the alleged ability to move or manipulate objects without any physical interaction, just the power of the mind. While it's a staple of science fiction and the supernatural, the idea of mind over matter has fascinated scientists and skeptics alike for over a century and possibly longer. From dice rolling in university labs to military-funded research, telekinesis has been put to the test in controlled environments, with results that are as mysterious as they are controversial. Despite repeated efforts, mainstream science has yet to find conclusive evidence of that telekinesis is real. But that hasn't stopped believers from sharing their extraordinary stories, whether it's spoon bending at a dinner party or random event generator acting oddly. The line between trickery and the paranormal is often blurred. Still, the allure persists. Could the mind really influence the physical world? Today, we're diving into the weird, the wild, and the wonderful world of telekinesis under the microscope. Strap in. The truth might be stranger than fiction.
Welcome to the Gateway to the Unknown podcast. I'm Dan Higman.
And I'm Norm Domek.
Each episode, we open the door to the strangest concerns of reality, where ordinary people experience extraordinary things. Today, we're exploring telekinesis in controlled environments. Is it real? Is it a trick? Or is it something in between? Grab your spoons, clear your minds, and let's see if we can move the needle literally. I know telekinesis. That's a very interesting and very controversial topic. A lot of people they believe in it wholeheartedly, Norm, and there are other people that just say, "Ah, poo-ha, it's a bunch of bull." And I don't know. What do you think?
I think that it's real. I think that it's always been real. I think that we pretend that we can do it as kids, and who knows, maybe sometimes we actually do that. I mean, have you ever, looked at a light, a flashlight, and tried to turn it on with your mind, or you know watching Star Wars, for example, and you see Luke using the Force? That's telekinesis. Call it whatever you want, the Force, or all of these other things, but that's what it is. And I think that there can be some trickery, to make people believe. I mean, magicians do that all the time. It's the sleight of hand, and to make people believe certain things. So, you know, like anything else that's paranormal, there is the real and there is the fake, and then there's the truth that's probably somewhere in the middle.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I mean, you're going to have those that are going to take advantage of the trickery and try to pull the wool over one's eyes, so to speak. But
Yeah.
when it boils down to it, I personally feel that there is something deeper with this phenomena, and that remains to be seen. I mean, they're still actively experimenting with it and researching it. And I believe that there are those out there that do possess the capability of telekinesis. Some examples, for instance, in the late 1970s, the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, called PEAR, PEAR, began testing whether people could influence the output of random event generators called REGs. Just by thinking about it, over hundreds of thousands of trials, some participants seemed to nudge the results away from pure chance, but the effects were tiny, just a hair above statistical noise. The lab's founder, Robert Wan, insisted that the findings were significant, that critics argue the results were within the margin of error. Another example, in 1934, J.B. Ryan at Duke University tested a gambler who claimed he could influence dice rolls with his mind. Get that guy and go to Vegas. But after months of rolling, the results hinted at a possible effect. The replication proved exclusive. Ryan's experiments sparked debates, decades of debates, with skeptics to flaws in experimental design and supporters clinging to the tantalizing anomalies. Also in 1971, American psychic Felicia Paris allegedly moved a pill bottle across her kitchen countertop only with her mind. The event was witnessed by parapsychologist Charles Hawthorne, who vouched for its authenticity. However, critics later suggested that there was a possibility of invisible threads or static electric that could have played a role in leaving the incident unresolved. Also, the infamous Project Alpha at Washington University in St. Louis, conducted between 1979 and 1981, saw two men demonstrate apparent telekinesis under loose lab conditions. Unbeknownst to researchers, the pair actually musicians sent by James Randi, who exposed the Randy. Sorry about the butchering of the name, but he sent the men to expose ease of which scientists could be fooled. The telekinetic feats were a all sleight of hand, but the scientists didn't catch it until Randy revealed could very well be sleight of hand. Some of these guys they're really slick and they can do this stuff, and you can watch and watch, and you just simply can't see them pulling off.
Hmm.
The Russian psychic Ella Vindra Grodov, wow, sorry, butchering these names, wowed audiences by moving objects of acrylic sheets. Investigators later determined that she was likely using electrostatic charges, rubbing the surface of her hair to make lightweight objects scoot across the plastic rather than true power of the mind.
Oh,
Yuri Geller, a world famous spoon bender, built his reputation on live TV demonstrating metal bending, and I've seen him dozens of times on TV.
yeah.
However, magicians and skeptics repeatedly caught him using sleight of hand under controlled scientific conditions. He failed to reproduce his feats. And then in 1980, telekinesis parties swept across America. And I remember growing up, my sisters would have slumber parties, and they would play around with telekinesis. And I just kind of watch them, and I'd shake my head and walk away. But the parties were very popular. They swept across America. Attendees would chant, shout, and focus their intent on bending cutlery. Many left. Many were left convinced they'd witnessed real psychic phenomena. Those psychics argued the atmosphere of excitement led to the heightened suggestibility and sometimes accidental physical bending.
Yeah. So go back a second. Really nothing to do with telekinesis. Tell me about these sleepovers your sister had.
I'll tell you what,
Any good
they,
looking girls there?
oh my heavens, that's for another podcast.
Oh
So
my.
yeah, my eyes got opened more than once. That on a regular basis, you know.
Yeah. Well, with this, being a little more serious, but not much. When people have slumber parties, they do these paranormal kinds of things. Look in the mirror and say, the whole Bloody Mary thing, and have seances and get the Ouija board, all of that. It's fun. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be scary. It's meant to bond. It's meant to bring people out of their shell, and it's also a, kind of a truth or dare, pushing boundaries, kind of a thing when
Oh yeah.
when young people get together in that type of context, whether it's a sleepover, whether it's a fishing, you're all hanging out around the campfire. All these things happen, and I think it's pretty interesting that sometimes the same things happen with the same people. So, is that is that are those guided by our mind? For example, with some of these telekinesis experiments, they try to repeat them and nothing happens. Could it be almost like the metaphysical, you know, when it when you observe something, it changes, and is it a wave? Is it a particle? Well, it's one until you look at it, and then it becomes something else. As soon as the art of observation or being conscious of that changes the result. So could that be what's happening here? Is that why these results cannot be repeated? Because now they're being looked at, and once they're looked at, the results are no longer what the original intent was. Do you think that could factor in somehow, possibly?
That's a good possibility. I never really thought about it that way, but you've got a good point there. And I think it's a good possibility.
Yeah. Just a thought. So I think you've got one more here about some people in China.
Yeah, in 2022, Chinese scientists took a technological approach using brainwaves to remotely control metamaterials. Well, that isn't really telekinesis or true telekinesis. Some electronics translate brain signals into action. Excuse me. Uh, it's the closest science to come to mind over matter in a controlled setting. And that's very interesting.
So would that almost be like a remote control airplane, or anything that can be controlled remote control, something to that effect, possibly?
It's very possible. I know I've seen where on these different syndicated TV shows where they'll take an object and uh, like a remote control airplane, and you have somebody flying the plane, but then you have a person trying to take control of the plane with their mind. And I've seen some pretty interesting results,
Mm.
but whether or not it's actually happening, there again, that's a good question. You know,
Right.
the guy's controlling the plane to go into a loop to loop configuration, and the guy that's trying to control the plane with his mind, he'll have the plane where it's supposed to go into a right turn loop. The guy he has it go into a left turn loop. Is the guy with the remote control doing that, or is the guy doing it with his mind? The results were rather interesting.
Cool. That sounds very cool. I haven't heard about that. So I'll tell you what I have heard about. We have a mailbag story from Fall River, Massachusetts. Is it okay if I read that?
Oh, absolutely. Go for it.
Right. Short story mailbag. Hi, my name is Charlotte, and I live in Fall River, Massachusetts, a small town where winters arrive like whispers and linger like ghosts. I live just a few blocks from the Lizzie Borden murder house. My experience happened last November, on a night when the sky had just started to let go of its first heavy snow. The world outside my window had gone soft and silent, blanketed in white. Inside, I was wrapped in an old knit throw on my couch, a mug of cocoa warming in my hands. The reading lamp cast a mellow halo across the living room, glowing off the polished surface of my grandfather's antique coffee table. The house creaked occasionally, as old houses do, but otherwise it was just me and the hush of falling snow. I had been obsessing over telekinesis for a college psych project all week. Case studies, experiments, hoaxes. I didn't really believe in it, but I thought it was super interesting. Not seriously, but still, curiosity had a way of planting seeds. That night, the cocoa nearly gone and my legs tucked under me, I noticed the TV remote sitting just out of reach on the table. I felt like this small object might be something I could move. Maybe. I quieted my mind through an hour or so of deep meditation, occasionally glancing over at the remote. Finally, I said, "Come on." I whispered, just a little closer. Nothing. I used more intent and more emotion, thinking about the connection between the same types of organic substances that comprise the remote and the organic substances in me. I needed to make the connection and really believe that the remote was an extension of me, like a hand. We are one. We are the same. I slowly chanted and tried to feel it in my soul. After some time, it could have been 10 minutes or it could have been an hour, but then the remote twitched. I froze. A soft, dry scrape echoed off the wood as it slid maybe an inch, no more. I stared at it, daring not to breathe. My arms were still wrapped around the mug. I hadn't moved, not a finger. The room suddenly felt heavier, charged. The hair on my arm stood up. Again, I said, my voice barely a sound. Again. I focused, squinting and straining without understanding how. The remote inched forward again, another scrape across the tabletop. My heart was racing now, hammering against my ribs. I wasn't scared, not exactly, but something primal in me, some old inherited instinct, was trying to decide whether to run or stay perfectly still. I gave it one last try, funneling every ounce of willpower I had into that rectangular piece of plastic. It slid one final inch, then stopped, dead still. The feeling in the room faded as quickly as it had come, like the tail end of a thunderstorm rolling into the distance. I stared at the remote, half expecting it to start moving again, but nothing happened. I tried a dozen more times that night. It never budged. I told no one. Who would believe me? Maybe it was the trick of static electricity, maybe a gust of air from the heater, or just maybe something inside me reached out and touched the world just once. Now, every year when the snow falls, I find myself back on that couch, cocoa in hand, eyes locked on the coffee table, and I wonder not if it happened, but why only once, and and what might happen if it ever happens again. And that was from Charlotte in Fall River, Massachusetts, who lives near the Lizzie Borden murder house. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I have to ask you, have you ever sat and stared at an object and tried to get it to move?
Yes.
I have to admit, I have to. I have to. I used to have a couple of these little box cars or whatever they call them. And a couple of them, I hung on to them, and
Little
eventually,
box cars.
yeah, yeah. And I'd set them there, and I'd just fixate on them and try to get them to move with my mind. I was never successful, but I have to honestly admit I tried. I
Yeah.
tried.
I'll get out some ham and some bread and some mustard, and I just stare at it all, hoping it will make the sandwich will make itself. But nope, I got to do it.
Come on, man, you're making me hungry. That sounds pretty good. And I just,
Black Forest ham and some whole grain Dijon mustard on some freshly baked sourdough bread that's been lightly toasted.
oh
How's
wow,
that for how's that for a ham sandwich, buddy?
yeah, that sounds good. I could actually go for lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise sandwich.
Lettuce,
Just
tomato,
the
oh
basic.
bacon.
Yeah, lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise.
All right,
Yeah,
you throw some bacon on there, it's okay. They call that a BLT, by the way.
BLT. Yeah, but and maybe a chunk of Swiss cheese or
Mm.
cheddar cheese. But
Mm. We need to do a culinary episode. That's what we need to do.
that
Because
would
you're
be
a
cool.
really good,
That would
yeah,
be
you're a
cool.
good cook. What we need to do is have a live episode at the end. I was going to talk to you about this. We might as well do it now. At the end of the season, we do a recap. We do it live, and then we have some food for everybody. We
That
can
would be cool.
make the food that we talked about on the podcast through the episodes and just have it ready. I
Yeah.
think that'd be I think that'd be fun.
Now
So,
we'll have to plan that. That would
yeah,
be really good.
yep.
Yeah,
I will make the arrangements. I will make the arrangements. We'll sell tickets, $20.
that
You
sounds
know,
fair.
how
Yeah.
about that? Something like that.
Come
And
hungry.
come hungry,
Yes.
and come hungry and ready for a long, slow hug from Dan.
No, I don't know about that.
I think that's going on the invitation.
Maybe slow long hug as long as it's a good looking blonde brunette or redhead.
Look,
And,
you know what? Don't limit yourself. You're past that point in life. Don't limit yourself.
I'm gonna be stingy. I'm sorry. But let's talk about some conspiracy theories. You're going to have those conspiracy theories. When it comes to telekinesis, some believe secret government labs have successfully weaponized telekinesis using psychic soldiers for espionage or sabotage. I believe that. I believe that. Think men who stare at goats. I don't know about that, but
There's a movie. Have you seen that?
I have not. Is that
That Yeah, that's the reference to that. The Men Who Stare at Goats. It's about the army, and I started watching it, but my wife wasn't into it, so we didn't. We did. I never finished. But maybe that's something you and I can do. Get together and have some coffee, and we'll stare at the TV, watching men staring at goats.
I don't know. I may have to check that out. I wonder if you could watch that on Netflix. But it's I truly believe that world governments have secretly and successfully weaponized telekinesis to create psychic soldiers and primarily used for espionage and sabotage. It wouldn't surprise me.
Right.
Others claim others claim the results of successful telekinesis experiments are being suppressed by mainstream science, fearing a paradigm shift in psychics and human potential. Another conspiracy theory is there's a theory that famous failures in telekinesis research are staged to discredit real uh, psychics who keep the power in their hands of a select few.
Never
Uh,
thought about that.
that's a very possible. Some suggest that telekinesis abilities or telekinetic abilities are latent in all humans, but are suppressed by modern technology, diet, even fluoride in the water. And I can remember growing up, the big thing was, oh, make sure you drink fluoride in your water to keep your teeth from going bad.
Right.
That was a big thing, but I've never heard of that. Fluoride in the water to suppress the possibility of telekinetic abilities. Fringe theory exists that extraterrestrials regularly use telekinesis and that the government contactees have witnessed objects moving unaided in secret bases. I believe that. I believe that these alien entities or EBEs, they have the capability of telekinesis and they use it readily. Another theory claims that certain global elites use telekinesis to manipulate stock markets and world events, staying hidden in plain sight. And that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. I wonder how that would work though. How could, because money is, it's all electronic. So it'd be interesting to see how that could happen. You know, what would that look like using telekinesis to manipulate something digital? You know, I guess there's that random generator, but what could you do? Make it go down using telekinesis, buy it low, make it go way up using telekinesis,
So what high?
then sell it high. I mean, if I guess that's how else would that work? That's interesting. I think that whole thing's cool.
Would
So
would you call that manipulating the stock market?
I believe that would be
Yeah.
the one of the clearest definitions, and it's manipulated a lot of different ways, and some is more covert than others, and some is more overt than others. But that would be the most overt way. I would think, you know, if you're privy to what's happening, then everything is overt. But otherwise, if you don't know what's happening, it's covert. But I looked up that movie for you, The Men Who Stare at Goats. It is not on Netflix as of now. It used to be. It is not on Hulu, but it is on Amazon Prime. So it's there. Maybe other places, but I stopped when I found it, and it's on Amazon. So check it out. So from 2009, Richard Clooney's in it, and it is 1 hour and 34 minutes.
Definitely have to check into that.
Yeah, I started watching it. I liked it, but you know, my wife was like, "What is this?" So we stopped watching it and started watching Ghost Whisper, which was fine because I liked that show. So, and I think I told you I met him, David Conrad, the male actor, the lead in
Oh
that.
yeah.
Yeah, really nice guy, super nice guy. You know, a lot of people who have a little bit of notoriety, they're kind of not as cordial as you would think. You know, it's kind of like never meet your heroes kind of a thing. And I've met quite a few people when I volunteer at the music hall, and there's a lot of acts that come in, a lot of comedians, a lot of you know, musicians, just a lot of performers that come in, and some of them they're just like regular people, man. They just want
Down
to
there.
hang out. And yeah, they want to hang out. They're like, hey, who's got good pizza around here? I want to go buy 50 pizzas for the neighborhood. They do that. Some of them do that, and some of them,
You gotta
you
quit
know,
that, Norm. You're making me hungry talking about all this food.
I'll order some pizzas for us when we have the live podcast. I'll take care of the pizza. There's a good one up there. I want to say it's Fox's. That's near the. There's a podcast. There's a podcast studio for live podcasts. Paduti. It's called Paduti. It's in
Trenum.
Tarentum, PA. I almost said Ambridge, but it is in Tarentum. And there's a pizza place. I want to say it's Fox's. It's pretty good up there. So I'll get us some pizzas, depending on how many people buy tickets. You know, but four slices a piece. and then all the other food will have. They're gonna leave. They're gonna leave hungry, or they will not leave hungry. They can come hungry. You know, they
Is
need
it
to show up with
what
wanting to eat and wanting a long, slow hug from you. That's the two things that's going to be on the invitation.
is it? Bring your own beer?
Mm, yes, sure. We could do that. We could do that. And champagne, I still have that champagne from episode 1 that we need to give out as a door prize or something. If they want, they can have champagne or they can have sparkling cider, whatever they choose. But how we're going to do that. And we talked about popcorn on that
Yes, we did.
episode too, because it was popcorn and champagne, and I made some comment about what kind of weird strip club are you going to? I remember that now, way back in episode 1. Man, we're on
Some
7 already, man. Whew,
some I
that's
haven't
crazy.
had for forever is popcorn. But there you are. You're talking about food again.
Yeah, I'm not hungry, but I will go eat some more pizza. I made pizza today. Big stuffed crust pizza. It's a ricotta, the pizza crust, and then ricotta and cream cheese mixed with a lot of garlic on top of that, and then capers and artichoke hearts, and then a 5 cheese blend on top of that. Stuffed the crust, more garlic on top of that. Baked it 375 for 27 minutes, and out it came. Perfect. Let it set for a few minutes. Let the cheese kind of do its thing, so it didn't run everywhere when I cut it. Yep, I had that in a cherry ginger ale, kind of fancy.
You're making me salivate.
You're a good cook. What are you having for dinner? Or
I haven't really thought about it, to be honest with you. Probably some popcorn.
do you do microwave or do you like in the skillet old school, like the a little bit of oil, shake them around?
I do both once in a while. We have a
Yeah.
hot air popper, or I'll
Oh,
do it in the microwave, or I'll do it on top of the stove. Just depends on whatever mood strikes me at the time. But again, it's something I haven't had for. I can't tell you when the last time was I had popcorn. I think
yeah.
when I went to the movies, and that's probably been 8, 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yep. Same. It's been a long time. So, well, that's a fact that you haven't been to the movies in a long time, and I have some other alleged facts. Can I? Is it okay if I start reading those?
Yes, Norm. Let's hear some facts about telekinesis. Maybe I might learn something.
Well, some alleged facts. This used to be the facts section, but then we didn't really agree with some of the facts that were on there, so we called them alleged facts. And these, I'm just going to go ahead and read them, and we're going to see. But some of these, what we call facts, they seem like they may be skewed one way or the other, and I don't know. I'm just going to go ahead and read them, and we'll talk about them after. But the first thing is that no controlled, repeatable scientific experiment has ever demonstrated telekinesis beyond a reasonable doubt. So we can't say for sure that it's 100% true, but there's there are ways to, you know, if somebody can do it all the time or a lot of the time on their own, but then when somebody watches it doesn't happen, again, does that have something to do with the observer? I don't know, changing it. So the next alleged fact is the US National Academy of Sciences and Research Council have both concluded there is no scientific justification for telekinesis. If they're trying really hard, and not just, and I say they, the establishment in general, I kind of have to say, I look at what is the information, I look at it with a bit of skepticism. If somebody has to tell you that they're a lion, are they really a lion? A lion doesn't have to tell you it's a lion. If somebody tells you, you can trust me, is that a red flag? Trust is something you have to feel. You can't make somebody feel that. So when somebody says something, when there's a ruling, like, oh, that's not real. Well, to what extent? You know what I mean? Because if it happened once, it's real. It may not be repeatable, but it's real. And in the scientific community, if it's not repeatable, it's just a theory. It's not a scientific law, so it's the whole scientific method. There's a hypothesis and then you go through the steps and then you come up with a conclusion. So if you can repeat it, but you can't repeat it often, you can still repeat it, right?
Makes
So,
sense.
all right, the next alleged fact. is telekinesis, as popularly described, would violate several well established laws of physics, including the conservation of energy and momentum. There is I have sources for these, so I'm going to take a look at that and see what that's about. How would that happen? How would it violate the laws of conservation of energy and movement? In order for something to move, I mean, do you have to have some internal or external forces, or an internal force that produces an external force? Something has to have something to push off of, basically, in order to move, whether it's electricity or air or something like that. So if we're just looking at a pencil, which is the graphic for this episode, the YouTube thumbnail is a man with a pencil sharpened on both ends, because that's how we work, right? We burn the candle
Yeah.
at both. We're writing stories with both ends of the pencil here. But that pencil, if it's laying on the table and we move it, what's pushing it? Is it electric? Is it air? What are we doing? How are we moving the atoms inside the pencil that are pushing off each other to make that move? So that would be an interesting part of the investigation. Telekinesis is, can we move it? But I think there needs to be a little bit more to it. It's like, how do we move it, or how is it being moved? So the next alleged fact: magicians can convincingly fake telekinetic effects using sleight of hand, misdirection, and suggestion. I could see that, if they float ping pong balls, or, different things like that. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, because they put the ball up there and then they move their hand around it, and there's all kinds of different things. And a lot of old acts they're old for a reason. They've been around. And I like Penn and Teller. They used to have a show that would debunk or show the tricks. And a lot of magicians didn't like them doing that, but they were moving the needle forward. They're saying, look, we need to up our game here. All these old tricks were cool in the 1800s and early 1900s, but this is 100 years later, folks. Let's up our game. The next one is, some experiments, like those at the Pear Lab, found tiny statistical anomalies, but these are not widely accepted as proof. They were just statistical outliers, I guess. The next one is, brain computer interfaces can allow people to move objects with their thoughts, but only via electronic mediation, not pure mind power. Okay? Belief in telekinesis is more common than you'd think. About 15% of Americans say they believe in psychic abilities. So that's the first time psychic abilities has come up with telekinesis in today's episode. So is telekinesis part of psychic abilities? Or if somebody can do telekinesis, practice it, make it work, are they called psychics because they can do that? So I think that would be worth defining, those nuances there of, what is psychic, what is telekinesis, and what's the correlation. I think that would be pretty interesting. The term psychokinesis was coined in the early 20th century and has been used interchangeably with telekinesis ever since. So it's the same thing. Telekinesis and psychokinesis, same thing. Okay. All right. Do you have anything to add about any of those things?
I think your mind can really play tricks on you, especially if you have a magician professing telekinesis, but he's using sleight of hand. And it's just one of those things that's really hard to say. There's
So,
just, I got
oh, I was gonna say, if we're playing Monopoly and you need to roll double sixes to get out of jail, right? And you think double six, double six, double six, and you drop it and you get a double six. Is that telekinesis, or is that just luck?
coincidence.
Coincidence?
Yeah. I'd
What?
say telekinesis, I think, in order to pull something like that off, it's not just going to be a simple matter of instantaneous thought.
Okay.
You say it or think it, and it happens right now. I think it's something that you have to concentrate on in order to get telekinesis to reveal itself, if that makes sense.
Okay. It does. Okay. Well, there's some other psychological aspects of all of this. And I think everything's a psychological aspect of telekinesis since it has to do with the mind. So, would you like to read that part?
Yeah, that's a good point, Norm. People believe in or experience telekinesis for a variety of reasons. Our human brain, or the human brain, is wired to find patterns and meaning, even in random events, making us susceptible to seeing cause where there is only coincidence. Confirmation bias leads us to remember the hits, those rare moments where, like you just said, the dice, double sixes, when the dice land on just that right number or a spoon seems to bend. Our mind quickly forgets the misses. Suggestibility plays a huge role, especially in groups like telekinesis parties, where excitement and expectation uh, can make ordinary events seem extraordinary. For some, belief in telekinesis offers a sense of control and empowerment, especially in uncertain times. Others draw to the mystery and the wonder, enjoying the idea that the world is stranger than it appears. Sometimes psychological stress and strong emotions can lead to experiences that feel paranormal, blurring the line between mind and matter. And of course, the influence of pop culture keeps the dream alive, making telekinesis feel like it's just a thought away.
So there's some psychological and sociological impacts with this, and telekinesis has left a significant mark on society and culture. It inspires hope that humans might one day transcend physical limitations, fueling everything from self-help movements to scientific research. The topic brings people together, whether at spoon-bending parties or online forums, creating communities united by curiosity and wonder. It also serves as a metaphor for personal empowerment. If you can move objects with your mind, what else might you achieve? At the same time, belief in telekinesis can foster skepticism toward mainstream science, encouraging alternative worldviews and sometimes conspiracy thinking. The debate over telekinesis highlights the tension between evidence and experience, science and belief. In classrooms, it sparks lively discussions about the nature of reality and the limits of human potential. And for many, stories of telekinesis offer comfort, suggesting that the universe might be more magical and more responsive to our will than we ever imagined.
I never really delved into telekinesis very deeply. I am sure that there's more to it than what meets the eye for sure.
Mhm.
You know, you take pop culture, huge in telekinesis. You take the movie Carrie in 2013, Stephen King's telekinetic teen wreaks havoc at the prom. And I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, Carrie.
I haven't seen the new one. Have you seen the remake from 2013?
I have. I've seen them multiple times. Yeah, it's a good show.
Is it better than the first one? The one in 76 scared me. I was a kid. So, how does the remake compare to the original?
I'll have to be honest with you. My personal opinion that a lot of remakes aren't as good as the originals.
Mhm.
But I've seen a few where remakes were actually better and more captivating. But for the most part, in my personal opinion, I think the originals had more impact than the remakes. Some of these movies, they tend to drive it into the ground, so to speak, and it loses something. But they were both good. They were good shows, but I liked the first one the best. I really
Okay.
did. Another series is Stranger Things, and that's
Yeah.
a series that was on Netflix. Eleven's mind powers are central to the series plot, and I've watched it a few times. I really couldn't get into it, but it's on Netflix for those that want to check into it.
That's a good
Uh,
one. That's a really good show. That's one of my favorites. They have a new season coming out. I want to say it's season 5, and they got, there was some Hollywood, some strike issues that put that show plus a lot of other ones behind schedule, and Stranger Things is a show about kids and telekinesis and a lot of things that happen in the paranormal. So it's not just telekinesis, but it is woven in there, and it's a pretty good show. I mean, if you haven't seen it, I would say if you have seen it and you excuse me, if you have not seen it, I would say give it a try. If you did give it a try and you didn't love it, I would say give it another try because it really does get into some really cool stuff. I think you would like it.
Now I may have to take you up on that, check it out again.
Yeah.
Another big one, and of course, always big, Star Wars. The Empire Strikes Back, 1980, and that's when Luke Skywalker lifts his X-wing. That's his spacecraft, his X-wing, lifts it up with force, and it just always rings in my mind. The force is with you, or the force will be with you. Another one is Matilda, 1996. A gifted girl uses telekinesis to turn the tables on a cruel or her cruel head mistress. And I saw that was a pretty good show. Another one is the X Men franchise. And to be honest with you, that's another one that I just never really get into, although I've watched a few of them. But the X-Men franchise, characters like Jean Grey and Magneto showcase mind over matter with their mind over matter powers. Another one is Fringe. That's a TV series, featured episodes exploring telekinetic experiments and their consequences. I'm not real familiar with that one. Another one is, we talked about this earlier, The Men Who Stare at Goats, 2009. Real life military research into psychic abilities. And I'm going to look that one up later. I think I'm going to make myself a bowl of popcorn. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to watch Men Who Stare at Goats tonight.
Right
And
on.
another one is 1988. The anemic classic features children with devastating telekinetic powers. And then you have The Spoonbenders. That's a novel by Daryl Gregory, a family of psychics, including a telekinetic, navigates life and secrets. And I'm not familiar with that one either. But
I have not read that book.
these are some books that I'm definitely going to check into because it's just an interesting topic. It really is.
Yeah, I would like to start to rewatch the Fringe series. It was good. My daughter introduced me to that, and it was good right from the very beginning. Normally, my wife will give a new series, we'll give it 3 shows. The first show might be horrible, second show might be horrible, third show it better be okay because we give it 3 shows, and then but for Fringe, right from the very first show it was really good. So I would suggest that one. That and Stranger Things. Those 2 things I think would be good. And those are series, but the Men Who Stare at Goats, I liked it. I only got like half an hour into it, and my wife was like, "Not for me," and I don't want to sit there and watch it myself. You know what I mean? So I'm going to watch it at some point on the plane. I'll download it and just watch it myself on a flight across the country or whatever. So which I have another one coming up here. What, 2 days? I'll be flying. So I think I'm going to download that. Dan, thank you for the idea. I appreciate that. So all of these telekinetic experiences that we see on TV and in the movies and the books, we've tried all that. We've tried to move something, try to flush the toilet without using your
Yeah.
hand. Well, I mean, maybe not anything. Let me rephrase that. Because you can flush the toilet without using your hands, and not use telekinesis. It was a weird night. I don't want to get into it.
Six.
But as kids, we've all drew something on a piece of paper, and it was like make Kool-Aid, and you draw it and you press the button, and you wait for some Kool-Aid to be making or whatever around your house. That's just imagination, right? The kids do. It just that's part of exploring boundaries, I think. So how do you debunk something that doesn't happen all the time? Well, you have to wait for it to happen to say that it didn't happen, or you can have to try to make it happen to say that it's not happening. But just because it doesn't happen when and where you want it to doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Telling people that they're kooks because they've seen aliens, it's a part of misinformation. It's part of compartmentalizing story. So if somebody says only crazy people see aliens, and then you see an alien, you're not going to tell anybody because you don't want to be branded as crazy. So if you can move something telekinetically, you're not going to tell anybody because it might be considered weird. And if you're a young adult, that's a hard time in anybody's life. And with all the changes physically and then mentally that go along with that, and then there's the whole social scene, all of that's tough enough without adding in being psychic or being an abductee or any of these other things that are kind of in the paranormal sphere, right? Sometimes you don't want to say you saw Bigfoot, because you were fishing or whatever, because you don't want to be that kooky kid, right? So what happens in a paranormal sense, whether it's telekinesis or whatever, that doesn't get reported because people don't want to be judged, right?
I agree. I agree.
So I think that the whole debunking thing is just trying to compartmentalize things and make people not talk about it. That's what I think. That's part of my conclusion on the entire telekinesis thing. I think it's real. I think it's being manipulated so that it's not talked about, and the people who can do it may be kind of introduced to a job that has a grander scope, whether it's for a military organization or a global business, because there are people that have really interesting jobs, and they're not all doing secretarial work, and they're not all accountants. They're doing some other things, and they're doing things like this. How do you advertise for something like that in the newspaper?
Yeah,
Well,
for
you
sure.
don't. You don't. You everything that we do online is monitored. So if you're Googling, I can move stuff with my mind, you bet you're going to be, observed. You got somebody that's following you somewhere and is going to make
Amen.
an offer somewhere, at some point,
What kind of debunking attempts do you think are involved with telekinesis, Norm?
Well, I think people have created these studies and they've guided the studies, but like most studies. The people who fund a study know where they want it to end up. And so they guide the data, they guide the experiments, they get the outcome that they want. So they can say, look, this is the way it is. It can be debunked if they want to debunk it. They can make it real if they want to make it real. So all of that to say that unless something happens all the time, or doesn't happen all the time, you can't debunk it. You have to set up the experiments to say yes or no at the end. This is real, this is not real. And again, being an observer of a situation, we know that changes things. So maybe by observing the telekinesis situation that has already happened, it makes it not happen again. People have been trying to debunk it, but they have to wait for it to happen. And so it's just one of those things that people will say it's not real. They say they find no credible evidence. They say that they've done all these scientific experiments and it's just not true. Telekinesis is not true, is what they say. But again, going back to what you said earlier, is it real? But we're just told that it's not real so that they can keep it off the radar of everybody. Let's say that they prove tomorrow that telekinesis is real. What will that do? All these kids are going to be staring at their pencils, trying to make them move and wondering why somebody else can do it and they can't. Is that going to make that kid feel inferior? Maybe. I would say yes. If everybody can do something and they can't, I don't know. Is there a psychic school that they can have telekinesis like in X-Men where you go through this training? I'm sure there is. Remote viewing, what is that? You're doing something with your mind. You're traveling. That's remote viewing. You're looking at coordinates, you're looking at something somewhere in your mind's eye. Whereas telekinesis, you're using your mind's eye to move something physically. Now, does it have to be a localized thing? Does the pencil have to be in the same room? Or can the pencil be 5 states away? Can you just think about it and move it? I don't know. I don't know if those studies have ever been done. I've tried to research that, and I can't find any where long range telekinesis has been experimented on. I can't find it. Maybe there's some data out there, but I even had AI help me look, and it's like, nope, nothing here. Nothing to see here, folks. So I don't know. That's a debunking attempt. People try to debunk it, and they do because they just say it's not true. But they
Uh,
say Bigfoot. They say Bigfoot's not real because they haven't found a Bigfoot body laying in the woods.
don't they say that we as human beings haven't even tapped 1/3 of the potential of what our mind is capable of doing?
Something like that,
Yeah.
you know? And, is that done on purpose? Is that the fluoride? Would we use all of our mind if we weren't bombarded with chemicals in the water, in the air, in our food? Are we being subdued mentally and physically and psychically with every screen? I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 big screens just blasting me with electromagnetic radiation. Is that stopping things in some way? I don't know.
The dumbing down of a population.
Yeah.
They don't want us to possess these capabilities.
Right.
And with that, in conclusion, uh, telekinetics remains one of the great mysteries at the edge of science and imagination. While controlled experiments have yet to deliver proof that the mind can move matter, the stories, anomalies, and the dreams persist. It is wishful thinking, clever trickery, or are we just missing the right key to unlock the hidden human potential of the human mind? The debate continues to captivate, inspire, and sometimes divide. Here at the gateway to the unknown, we celebrate and search for the answers because sometimes the journey is as fascinating as the destination. If you've ever been a spoon, nudged the die and make those numbers come up, or just felt the world move in a mysterious way, we would like to hear from you. Send us your stories, contact us, tell us what's on your mind when it comes to telekinesis and any other brushes with the extraordinary. I'm sure it's going on, it's out there. Like Norm stated earlier, people are afraid to come forward because they don't want to be labeled as crazy or labeled as a kook or a nut. We want to know, and we take what we do very seriously. We research and investigate this stuff thoroughly. And we might not like the answers that we come up with, wishful thinking that it may be something other than what it is. But in any event, it's going on, it's out there. And we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear your comments. What can we do to these podcasts better? Do you have things of interest that we're just simply not covering? Contact us. Let us know what your thoughts are. And with that, Norm, as always, stay safe. God bless. And thank you for tuning in to the Gateway to the Unknown. God bless.
In the still of night, where shadows